Welcome to the Do That Music Thing podcast, hosted by Christopher Foust and presented by 1840 Music Group. This is the podcast where we dive deep with the people pushing the music industry forward, whether it's managers making bold moves, promoters breaking new ground, lawyers changing the game, or artists blazing their own trail. We talk to the folks making it happen. Every episode is packed with real-world stories, strategies, and tactics you can use to grow your own career in music. If you're looking to break through or just stay sharp, you're in the right place. Let's get into it and do that music thing. I've got an awesome guest from the Pittsburgh area, Mr. Brandon Lehman. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Man, I'm awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And you are my first guest, I think, to manage and create this type of business. So, you manage Little Giant studios and rehearsal space. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. And so you're my first guest, and coming from a band background, the rehearsal space is just something that is just absolutely vital. And I know every high school band and college band knows that, like, heartbreak when you can't rehearse because you don't have someone's mom's garage to go to, or an
Mhm.
old warehouse that someone's grandmother owns. Like, I'm really excited to have you on the show, clearly. But let's go ahead and tell me a little bit about you and why you started Little Giant.
Totally. Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. I am a professional guitarist and singer in Pittsburgh. I, uh, I might as well be from there. I moved there in 2002, like for high school. I went to the performing arts high school and studied a little bit of music in college. So I kind of had a little bit of of some music education, but then definitely like a lot of like real world education and gigging and playing around and writing my own songs and playing for other people and working in studios and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of ran the gamut a little bit of what you can do, I guess, as a guitar player and then a songwriter. uh, and then sort of through my experiences in that, I discovered the diminishing options for places where we can rehearse. And in Pittsburgh, there really are only a handful of band lockouts. Terminology lockout being just like a room that you rent on a monthly basis and keep all your gear in. You meet for rehearsals and stuff, and a lot of bands will share that with two, three, four, five other bands to cut down on the cost. And a lot of these rooms are found in like storage facilities. So I just like grew up either finding someone's basement, or if somebody did have a practice space, with like four drum sets crammed into it, those were the options. And so as I sort of started traveling and playing in Nashville and working on music in LA and New York, the backlined rent by the hour or day type of studio model became very clear to me. And then I was just like, oh well, someday somebody will do it in Pittsburgh, and so far nobody had. So I decided to find a space and kind of outfit it with gear and try to make it as nice as possible. I think that we deserve nice spaces that foster creativity, and that was sort of like my trajectory into this. It wasn't necessarily planned. I just assumed somebody else would do it, and nobody did. And so I opened the studio in in the building that we're in 2023. So this is we're sort of halfway through our third year. Um, and that's kind of where we stand today.
That's awesome. Oh, I'm gonna do a quick little pause. Once I'm gonna close this door real quick.
Sure, sure.
Awesome. Well, I love people that have that type of, want to change their local scene. And that's always been like the biggest thing for me, especially when I was younger in creating bands, is that you can have successful bands, one offs, but what makes really successful bands are scenes. I mean,
Hmm.
think about all of the great bands that you love. They all came out of scenes. Like, I mean, clearly, there's the, early 90s, late 80s grunge scene out of, Pacific Northwest. There's the
Hmm.
80s hair metal stuff. I mean, there's the Texas, country, Nashville. I mean, all these places have scenes, but it takes people like you to kind of build that infrastructure for those scenes to grow.
Yeah, yeah, and it's Pittsburgh is by nature and by geography just like a very neighborhood community type of spot. I mean, we have like 100 different neighborhoods that are kind of each their own little compartment, their little place in time, and they have their own kind of infrastructure. And they certainly work together, and where venues are and where other opportunities are for musicians and the arts in general. Um, but sometimes it can be a challenge connecting those, and that is and yeah, the importance of a scene or of a music community. It's everything. I mean, it's the foundation for everything else that could be built on top of it. And so, cultivating that and trying to build that up is, of utmost importance to me.
So let's say a band is in the Pittsburgh area and clearly rehearsal space is valuable, right? That's incredibly valuable. But what else can a band do with a rehearsal space? What are some interesting like strategies that they can utilize that space for?
Well, that's a great question because when I initially opened, I said, okay, great, this will be a great place for rehearsal. Um, and then as I was sort of setting it up, I had a few rehearsals in there myself with other bands or other artists that I played with or for, and realized I'm like, huh, the lighting is actually really good in here. This is a great place to shoot some content. Um, and just share like what we've been up to. Making, nowadays it's so for a lot of people, it's so innate to just like whip out your phone and take a video of whatever it is that you're doing in whatever process, whatever stage of the process. Um, and so I realized being in that studio for a short amount of time that this would be a great content studio. And then, as we were kind of going down that rabbit hole, bands would ask me, do you do recording? I mean, this space sounds really good. Um, do you record music here? And I mean, at that point, the answer was no. Um, but I am always open to like what the community is telling me that they need. I'm not going to go assume that everyone, I have kind of a good idea being a musician in the scene too, but um, I rely on folks who are using the studio to tell me the things that they need. And then it is up to me as a business owner to provide that opportunity either there or steer them in the direction of somewhere else that has that. So then we started going down the rabbit hole of recording, which is a whole different set of technology and infrastructure and build out and expertise, and the expertise that I didn't have. Uh, I could record a rehearsal for somebody as a demo for demo purposes or for the purposes of filming and recording that rehearsal for to look back on and work on your show from like a musical direction perspective. I was not in a position to be making records. Um, and so, meanwhile, I was sort of hosting these, semi-regular community meetups just to open the doors to the studio, have people come in, hang out, connect, network, all that kind of stuff. And I met Colin, who's my now studio engineer and is responsible for all of the recording that happens in the space. And we make records, we do voiceovers, we film live sessions, multi-camera, high-end recording. We have a bunch of different isolation rooms that we can work with. We built a control room for him in the space, and then the big live room just naturally sounds good with a little bit of treatment. And so now it's not only a place for rehearsing or content creating or these community public events, but now a full-fledged recording studio. And at first was not on my plan. It was not in my notepad of things that I wanted the space to be. I kind of just wanted to start with the core product and let everyone else tell me what they needed.
It's so funny to me that more rehearsal spaces don't provide that, the recording piece specifically. And it makes me think there's a fairly big-ish rehearsal chain in Nashville. And I remember we rented one of their small rooms out. This was like 2008 or 9, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, man, we really got to get like a demo together, but we don't have enough money to do a recording studio. It's like, well, I've got a 002, like a Digi Design, like an old
Hmm.
Pro Tools rig.
Yeah.
And I brought that in with my laptop and I just was like, hey, can I just take the outs of the board? Um, just like the basic outs. And they were like, yeah, sure,
Hmm.
go for it, man. And that was, you know, one of the first demos that I ever produced personally, but also it came so natural and it sounded so awesome and raw and energetic. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we only did a little bit of overdubs, but I was so surprised with how good the product was.
Yeah. It's I wanted first and foremost people to be able to anyone who is like using the studio, I wanted them to be able to use anything in the room. And excuse me, they we put in an X32 mixer on purpose, because one, it's industry standard, and two, you can use it to record and run your session live. So I was telling everybody, if you want to record your session, all it takes is plugging in a computer to the board or plugging in a USB drive to the board and just taking a basic board mix. If you want to like listen back or make a demo, the biggest thing that this as a songwriter is uh, capturing the like momentum that you have when you're writing something great. And you might not have time to wait until you get home to get to your like home recording setup. If you wrote something at rehearsal or like put up your phone or something, you might need something a little bit more robust. And so you want to sort of capture the magic when it happens. And so, yeah, we wanted to make sure that you know, initially anybody in that room could record what they were doing, film it, record it, all of it. For documentation, for release, people have released sessions that they recorded themselves in the studio, which is so dope. Like I had nothing to do with it except giving them the keys to the room, and that was it. And they made everything else happen. And that's how we get better collectively, as like multifaceted songwriters who are learning to self-record and to tape themselves and stuff like that. It gives me great joy.
As content has kind of just become more and more of a need for artists, um, we also do marketing, or I've also done marketing for artists. And through our record label, 1840 Music, we work with artists to help with marketing. And one of the things we tell them is we're like, everything is an opportunity to collect content. And
Mm.
you don't have to overcomplicate it, you don't have to make it a big deal. And the rehearsal space is a really great place to capture content, especially in a scenario like your rehearsal space, where all they have to do is bring a computer, bring a USB, whatever, and just pull a board mix, throw up a couple of iPhones on a tripod. And guess what? You've got a potential demo, you've got social media content out the ass for the next, 3 or 4 weeks. Um, and a music video potentially, right? Depending on how many phones you have set up. So I love that you've got a space where artists can kind of come and be creative like that.
Yeah, totally. And people care what you're doing. They care, like, you could just be like sitting in a room writing a song. People care about that. If you plan on going out and playing that song, they're gonna care about the process leading up to it. So I think that that's like the kind of the big thing for me is to allow the capture of the entire process, because someone is going to care. And there's also, talking about like the sort of buzzword of content, and I talk about this with friends all the time, that don't don't conflate content with your music. It's not the same thing. And this kind of gets into like marketing, and something that I'm not. I didn't go to school for marketing. I have just simply had to market myself for such a long time that I have to understand the nuances of that content is, telling the story of your process or of your music, and that the product isn't even your music. The product is you as a person, as a songwriter. When somebody invests time or money or both into streaming a song or going to a show or buying a piece of merch, they're investing in you. It's not even simply the music, it's the full package. So, don't conflate um content with, with your music or with you as a person. It's it's something that, nowadays it feels like something that you have to do, uh to sort of, continue telling your story and to continue sharing. And for a lot of folks it can be really like, um man, like, I'm so tired, like, I worked all day, I just want to like write, but now I also feel like I have to make videos, and it's like so much more work on top of all this stuff. Um, but the power in it is that coming back to, people care. They want to see it. If someone's following you for your music or for you, they're going to care about the process leading up to it.
I always tell artists when it comes to social media, the easiest way to attack it is don't even worry about the music. It's ultimately not a form of media to consume music. It's to consume visual media, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw a huge jump with my audience when I stopped posting things about my music and started talking about music. And I started being like, hey, these are my top 5 favorite guitarists of the 1970s, or um one of my favorites that got so much love and hate was I made a quick 15-second video just holding my phone up, and I was like, has Metallica's Saint Anger become Alien 3? Are people like finally starting to come around to it?
Whoa.
And
Whoa.
you would not believe, or maybe you would believe, how the conversation that started. And the thing is like I'm a huge fan of the Alien franchise. I'm a huge fan of Metallica,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they just got me thinking because I loved Alien 3 as a kid, and
Yeah.
and I never could understand why it was hated so like just viscerally by people. And then the same
Yeah.
thing with Saint Anger. While it's a little more evident maybe with Saint Anger, sans a snare drum
Sure.
sound, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but
So you lit the match and walked away, and then you woke up the next day and you probably had a bunch of views and comments
oh,
and
it was
stuff.
insane. And the thing is like that is not an abnormal thought for me, right? Like,
Hmm.
and what I'm kind of getting at is that like, yeah, just talk about things you like. Ask a question, and it doesn't have to be long. 10 seconds, 15 seconds. That's all
Yeah.
it takes to kind of start a conversation, and pick the things out that maybe inspire you and talk about those things. Don't talk about the music that you make, but talk about the things that inspire you to make music.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's sound advice, and there's a lot of like overthinking and strategy and, these are the right ways to make your content and film your content, and these are the wrong ways. And there's a lot of like that kind of stuff flying around the internet. And if you feel like you want to deep dive into marketing strategy and all that stuff, great, go for it. But if that turns you off completely, then ignore all of it and just talk about the stuff you care about. Because if you care about it, someone else does, you'll find your audience. That is that's a big one for me for sure.
And the best way to connect with people, I think, around your music, like you want to connect to people, like instead of just talking about your music, thinking that's the way, like what are the common denominators between you and your audience, right? And that's the best way to connect with people, because that's always the most fun and the easiest way to make a fan, right? Is like,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of The Darkness, right? And or I'll say Jet. I'm gonna go see Jet tonight at the
Cool.
Ryman for the first time. Been a fan since 2003, and I'm just cannot
Yeah.
explain how excited I am about it. But when I talk about Jet, immediately people are like, "Oh, I love Jet. I love Jet." And then we start a dialogue, and then they kind of naturally find out that, "Oh, I make rock music too." And some of it kind of sounds like Jet. And
Hmm.
they're like, "Oh my gosh, I love this." I'm like, that is like the easiest way in the world to make fans.
Oh
Just talk
yeah.
about your common interests.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's been awesome to see. I mean, every day I'll be scrolling through Instagram, and like every other day I'll see either like a photo or a video posted from the studio. I have kind of like a backdrop with our logo on the back wall that a lot of people have liked to include in their like photos and stuff. So like I'll see the little guy everywhere. He doesn't have a name. I should probably name him, but um, but it's like such a treat to like scroll through and see a video of the band playing at the studio. I'm like, I wasn't even there. It's, for rehearsals and stuff, there's typically nobody there. It is set up in a way that it is, self-serve. You can come in and kind of do your own thing. And I have it set up that way on purpose to give someone privacy and like full reign. And certainly, we're just like a phone call or a text away if they need help. But it is very cool to like scroll through and like see, all these bands like, oh man, so and so was there. That's great. I didn't even know, that guitar player played in that band. And just like stuff like that. It's like very, very cool to see as like a business owner, and cool to see people, sharing what they've been up to.
So let's talk a little bit about kind of the Pittsburgh scene right now. I feel like as a
Cool.
rehearsal studio owner, you've probably got a nice kind of pulse on what's going on. So, like, I don't know, tell me what's going on in Pittsburgh musically.
Yeah, there are, I mean, I think like a lot of cities our size and with like music, um, with music economies our age, it ebbs and flows. There's peaks and valleys to it all, and I would say that the thing that we really have in the bag, and the thing that has not really ever been a problem or a holdback, is the talent in the community of the musicians and the folks making music in town. Um, we have so many talented people. We have, like local legends and famous musicians to come out of Pittsburgh. And then their generations, their kids growing up and staying in Pittsburgh and playing music. Amazing amounts of talent and sort of connectedness of the community. I think then where we're at, we have a lot of, kind of mid-level local venues that are sort of opening up, and there's some excitement about them. They're running for a few years and then they shut down. Um, and certainly, like the elephant in the room, COVID, like really like drew a dividing line uh, in the entertainment industry and really shined a light on the economics of what it means to run a music venue, and just how slim those margins are. And there are so many venues that were hanging on by a thread. And I'm not just talking about Pittsburgh. Venues hanging on by a thread. They're like, I don't even know what 2020 is going to look like. And unfortunately, we know what happened, and a lot of those venues shut down. Beloved venues who have been here, in Pittsburgh for decades. Um, so there is a challenge there in the spaces to create music, and there's a challenge in the excitement of audiences to attend those concerts. And there's, various issues in, the economics of what brings an audience out, what entices people to come from a venue, what entices people to come from the perspective of a band or an artist. Um, so there's a lot of great community and a lot of amazing bands, musicians, artists, who are kind of doing their thing. There is a bit of a lack of artist development. People are just working on themselves. There's not really a lot of resources for artists to grow and to kind of take that next step and to play bigger shows and to attract bigger crowds. It's sort of just like a pound the pavement until you get, 300-400 people out to your show. Um, and then there's not really a lot of infrastructure in sort of the world that I'm living in artist development and education, and in just places to work on your craft. There's no problem with rehearsing in your basement or like working on songs at home. Um, but it does something to your creative process if you're going into a space that's sort of like purpose built for that process. You know what I mean? Like here today, I'm shooting this podcast from my dining room. I don't know if you can tell, but every 2 minutes I'm fighting off a cat to get off the table so that they don't, interrupt the podcast. And imagine trying to like write a song at this table and like every 30 seconds there's a cat in your face. Like I love them to death. They're the light of my life. But when I'm in the mode to, the mood to write or to like work on something or record for a project, I got to go somewhere else. I got to be somewhere where there isn't a TV, where there isn't, a bunch of cats running around, kids running around, any of that stuff, to sort of strip the distractions. Um, so in that sort of infrastructure, the resources are fairly few and far between. Um, and part of my role now that I see excitement around the studio and I see bands who are playing, and I don't want to take responsibility for bands who are going out and like crushing a show, but I do see like artists who will play a show, then they'll spend some time at the studio, they'll book a bunch of sessions, they're the ones putting in the work. I'm simply just providing four walls and a roof and a little bit of technology for them to do what they need to do. And they'll come in for 2, 3, 4 rehearsals, and they'll go out and do a tour or do a show, and I'll see the videos and I'm like, holy shit, these guys are crushing. And so that's the kind of stuff I want to see more of. And, we have really cool new infrastructure coming in. My friend Jeff started Hellbender Vinyl, which is the first vinyl pressing plant in Pittsburgh, which is unbelievable. You can count on maybe, four hands how many pressing plants there are in the country. And uh, and we have one. And it's a guy that we've known for a long time, that we trust, and it's a place that we can walk down the street and like walk into the plant. Like that is unprecedented and amazing, with the vinyl still being popular, and a lot of artists are looking for man, how do I get people to like buy my music? Like how do I get people to care? Case in point, vinyl is as much a piece of art as it is your record. Uh, and as much care and attention you put into the packaging and all that, that is something people hold on to for a very long time that goes beyond streaming. So the fact that we have a pressing plant in Pittsburgh is amazing. There's a lot of of new venues and new artists who are, musicians who are opening venues and stuff, which is the coolest. That's what I think should always be happening. I want to empower musicians and anyone who is coming from a creative industry to open the spaces that their colleagues would use. Um, that's how we do it. I mean, that's how you build to that next level. And so, I'm sort of rambling in kind of like different directions, but basically, like where it comes down to it, the Pittsburgh music community is amazing. The talent is amazing. We have sort of like in the three-layer cake of the music industry, we have the community and talent part like lockdown. It's great. Even amongst the ebbs and flows, we always have that. The next part of that layer cake that I see is the economy, the local industry, like Little Giant Studio, recording studios, venues, universities, uh, taking care of the artists and folks who are creating music and ensuring that they have, the tools that they need, the infrastructure they need, the education they need to continue to grow. And then, then there's the industry, the top level of this layer cake that, we don't really have. We don't have bigger music brands moving into the city to plant seeds and grow. We have a little bit of it. We have a Live Nation office here, which, whatever, we could do a whole podcast on Live Nation. I don't want to I don't want to get into it, but read between the lines, if you will. So we do have a Live Nation office, and I have friends who work there, and they're amazing. Then we have just recently Upright Citizens Brigade, the comedy incubator, is opening an office in Pittsburgh, which is massive for the comedy community. And so we are starting to get a little bit of outside attention from some larger brands and organizations who are coming in to kind of plant some seeds. But we have a ways to go in that direction. I think starting from the ground up is kind of the way that Pittsburgh has always done it. Former steel town, folks have had to sort of like be scrappy and create opportunities for themselves once the collapse of the mills went down, and we have been sort of climbing ever since. And we sort of wear it in a prideful way that we're very DIY till we die. But my point is like, well, we don't have to do all of it by ourselves. There are strength in numbers, there's strength in community. So like, let's try to do as much as we can ourselves, and then like when we hit a wall, let's try to reach out and like build infrastructure and build more organizations to kind of keep us moving. So I think it's kind of like, boy, that was a long answer, but I think that's kind of generally where we are.
No, that's awesome. Well, this is my favorite part of the show, when I get to ask the guest about, what are some actionable items or tips that you would give someone, say an artist, to, work on their craft and move their career forward. What are some of those tips that you would give? Let's say an artist in Pittsburgh, what would you tell that person?
Yeah, I think a big piece of advice is to sort of try to take your ego out of the process and reach out to a band or artist or someone who's really like killing it in town or really doing it, and like shoot them a message, give them a call, like, hey, can I buy you coffee or buy you lunch? I just want to like pick your brain. There's no shame in like reaching out to someone who, at least to you, like from what you can see, is getting the opportunities that you want to go after, or is doing what you want to do, or seems to be like, writing all the music that you want to write, playing all the gigs that you want to play. And they're only a phone call away. Every single time I did that, sort of at the beginning of my career or in the middle, people said yes. And anytime somebody calls me to do that, I always say yes. Because that's like the best way to bounce ideas off of, to really understand what it is they're doing, what their process is. you can really get in your head a lot in whatever the process is of booking gigs or playing gigs or writing music or whatever. So just, reaching out to the folks who you see who seem to be doing all the things that you want to do, and if and just, giving them a call, shoot them a message, take them to lunch. Chances are, if you're looking at their social media, the point of social media is to make it look like you're always busy and you're always working and always doing something. The reality probably isn't that. It's probably a very a closer reality. Their reality is probably a lot closer to yours than you think. But you wouldn't know that until you go and sit down and have a chat with them. So I think that's always like, any organization or person who's doing something that you're really interested in, give them a call, chat with them, at least on the phone, and yeah, I think like document everything. That's the whole reason the studio exists, is to allow a place that makes it as easy, takes the friction out of the process of documentation, whether that's your drive to rehearsal, whether that's the pizza you guys ordered on a break at your recording session. All of that stuff matters. It's the culmination of that is your story. And so, how cool would it be for someone to see that you were sitting at the table at Little Giant Studio, you were eating a slice of Rialto pizza from Greenfield, and you wrote that song there at the table on like a greasy piece of paper because you spilled your pizza all over it, and you wrote that song and recorded it, and now everyone in town loves it and you get to go play it, and they saw the video of like where you were writing that song. How cool is that? So I think that's my biggest thing. Document it all, because you never know like what the magic's going to be, and it's so cool to like tell your full story. It's not just the final result.
Some incredible advice from Brandon Lehman. Thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. And where can people learn more about you and your rehearsal studio?
Totally. Our website is www.littlegiant.io, and we post a lot on our Instagram and in our email list. Instagram is @GoLittleGiant. So we'll post any, we also do like some live shows and some educational experiences. So all that stuff we post about. And then I, post my own playing out of the studio from there too, whenever I get a chance to. So that's where it lives.
Awesome. Well, Brandon, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Do That Music Thing podcast. To learn more about me, the host, Christopher Foust, you can catch me online at christopherfoust.com, on Instagram at chrisfaustmusic, or on Twitter at chrisjamesgtr. If you'd like to be a guest on the Do That Music Thing podcast, please feel free to email me at chrisfaustmusic@gmail.com. If you're a fan of the show, head on over and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for listening. I'm Chris Foust. Let's go do that music thing.